Before I start, I hope I'm audible and my presentation is visible to all. Yeah. So when I was asked to present on any topic in psychology, initially I thought I would speak on aviation because that's what I do right now. Mental health among pilots, cabin crew. And then I thought, so I was asking the age group, if it is age group between 11 and 16 or 17, then I changed my way of thinking. And I thought maybe I should talk in general about what personality is and how important personality is as far as emotional intelligence is concerned. So I'm not going into, my slides might look a little complicated. It's just for the slide's sake. I will explain and I will talk in detail about what it is. What is personality then? Is personality all about how you look, how tall you are, how fair you are, how dark you are, or how beautiful or handsome you are, the six-pack muscles that you have, or the Hrithik Roshans and all those handsome guys around? Or is it something more than that? Is personality something more than that? And I believe it is something more than that. From a psychological perspective, the external factors do make a difference, but more than that, the internal factors are important. So it's a combination of both, yeah? I'm a big fan of this guy. I hope you all know who he is, the famous Obama. I like the way he walks up the stairs with so much of energy. Whenever he's on an aircraft, he's jumping and running up. So I like the energy in him. I like the way he talks. He's a great orator. He's good looking. But I don't know anything about his mind because I've never interacted with him and I don't know what goes on in his mind. But from a personality perspective, he is on top of the list, one of the great personalities. Okay. So then what is personality? For me, and from a very psychology perspective, personality is a characteristic pattern which describes your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior. That makes you a very unique individual. And this characteristic is consistent. You can see these factors happening over time. Under stress, when not under stress, you find the same old traits coming up over and over again, and that is personality. If these traits change under different circumstances, and if you see a different person in different situations, then you don't have a personality. So these are traits that comes consistently over a period of time. Okay. I'm not going into all of that, but I think I have just 40 minutes, 35 minutes. So let me just try and conclude as fast as I can, because there is going to be an interactive session and I'm willing to answer all questions that you have. So personality is the combination of your DNA, your chromosomes that you get from your mom and dad, or from your grandparents or uncle and aunts. Then it's what you learn and imitate your preferred individuals in the environment that you cope, that you live, that you work, you try to imitate. Like small children, we imitate our parents. Similarly, we are constantly changing depending on how you like somebody and you try to imitate that person. So imitation and learning is part of the personality that you have. DNA is part of that. I'm going to connect personality and emotional intelligence towards the end, but for me, personality varies from individual to individual. Twins, identical twins can have similar personalities, but siblings could be diametrically opposite. My sister and I are two opposite individuals. She's very passive, two different opposite personalities. And why does that happen? Because of the way you learn, the way you are made up, the mental makeup in your brain, the intelligence, or the brain that learns to cope under severe stress, under different walks of life, the way you learn to cope. Okay, so different personalities cope differently. What are different personalities? You'll have different types of personalities. You have the abnormal type and you have the normal type. And all of us have some personality trait or the other that we use as strengths and we use as weaknesses. So if you have a strength that you don't react under pressure, then the weakness will be you are, say, bottling all your emotions up, and you bottle it up to such an extent that you suddenly have physical diseases, like you could have skin eruptions, or you could have ulcers, or you could have your blood pressure soaring up. Yeah. I'm going to a very important topic of mine, and that is the unconscious mind. I'm not going to go into the details, but I want you to know that our mind, the human mind, has three different portions: the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the unconscious. And research has shown that 90% of our unconscious mind is hidden. It is the 10% of our conscious mind that we show to people. So if you are reacting to a situation, you're reacting with your conscious mind that you're aware of. You're perceptive, you can see, you can hear, you can emote. That's your conscious mind. But deep inside the unconscious mind, you have a lot of hidden frustrations, emotions, wishes, anxieties, which sometimes comes up under pressure, under stress. You know, you might be perfectly normal in the morning, suddenly you start feeling sad by afternoon or evening, and that could be because of something that's hidden in the unconscious mind that relates to the environment that you're in, and you start emoting that way. This is a man you must have all heard, little kids know, but to a large extent you might have heard of Sigmund Freud. He is one of my favorites. He is the father of psychoanalysis. Why is he famous? Because he coined many of the terms that we use today in English colloquial language to explain psychology. So he coined the term defense mechanism. And what is defense mechanism? The mechanisms our unconscious mind uses to protect ourselves from breaking down under stress. So there are different types of defense mechanisms, such as denial, projection, blah, blah. Yeah, for example, I'll give you an example. Since I'm working in an airline, in the previous airline that I was working, there was a rule that all pilots, if they have a stress in their life, they have to come through the psychology department before they start flying. So it is for us to evaluate that they're okay before they start flying. So one of the pilots, it was all over the paper, so I can talk about it. It was New Year's Eve, and the captain and his wife went for the New Year's Eve party, and he had two sons, then 15 and 11. The children went in to attend the teenage party, right? So this 15-year-old guy was a very handsome, active person. As soon as he walked in, his friend said, are you guys familiar with the quad bikes? The quad bikes are something that we use in the desert to go into the desert. You know, it's got big wheels and you can use that to go into the desert. So his friend said, this bike is not working. Do you know how to start it? So he said, yeah. Being the smart kid, he said, yeah, I can. And he sat on the quad bike. His friend sat behind and he started the bike. Of course, the brakes failed and the bike went and hit against a cement barrack. You know, some construction was happening. And this boy died on the spot, and his pillion rider was taken to the hospital. Now, it so happens that here in this part of the world, when there is a party, especially a New Year's Eve party, the party goes on into the night. So the parents came home probably by 5. They were trying to be reached, but since it was loud music, alcohol, all of that, they were not reachable. Anyway, they came home by 5. They went straight to sleep. They did not check if the children have come home. By 8 o'clock, of course, the cops woke them up, and that's when they realized this boy was no more. So then, of course, he went and he collected, he did all the formalities. Legal formalities are big over here. So he did all the legal formalities, and he took the body home to his home country, cremated, and came back. So he came back in 2 weeks' time back to flying. So now he had to come through me. So he came through me, and I didn't see anything wrong in his mental health. It was a big learning curve for me as well. So I signed him off to fly. His wife and the other kid, the other brother, came for grief counseling. So while they were talking to me, his wife told me, I want you to see my husband once again. So I said, why, what happened? So she said, he does not come into the boy's room, the deceased boy's room. So the wife, the mother, and the other child would sit in the room, look at his pictures, look at his toys, his books, or writing, or whatever, but he will just come to the door, and he refuses to come inside. So I said, okay, send him in. So he came for the counseling. The first session went well. The second session was fairly okay, and I was wondering, there's nothing wrong with this man. The third session, he said something that caught my attention, and that was, he says, Doctor, I cannot switch my mobile off. So I said, why? He said, what if he's trying to call me from somewhere and he doesn't have the money to make that second call? My phone should be on 24/7 so that the minute he calls, I can answer the call. So what does that mean? That is, he is into denial. At the conscious level, he knows he's no more. He's going around doing his stuff. In fact, he's one of our best pilots. He does everything. But at the unconscious level, he still hopes, and he's not accepted his death, he still hopes that the boy will come back. So that is denial. And that is what I call defense mechanisms. And these were coined by a person called Sigmund Freud. Yeah. So he coined these defense mechanisms to explain to us that even when we go through stress, we don't actually break down. Our unconscious mind uses certain techniques to protect us from breaking down any further. So it elevates the anxiety that we go through, and it actually helps us go on in life without much of difficulty. Okay. So that's personality. So I've given you a gist of what personality is. A personality is not just about your physical attributes, it's also about your mental attributes and how you deal with situations, how you solve problems, how you react to situations, and how you look and how you cope under different circumstances. Emotions. Now, in today's world, intelligence is not just about general intelligence. It's just not about IQ. IQ is, if you get somewhere between 90 and 110, you're supposed to be of average intelligence. 110 and above is above average. 120 and above is genius. Below 90 is below average. But now we have emotional intelligence. We have general intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, executive intelligence. So intelligence is slightly breaking apart into different formats. So what is emotional intelligence? The ability to deal with your emotions, understand your emotions, understand another person's emotions in a given situation, and react appropriately. Okay? So if you go by the definitions, emotions are how individuals deal with matters or situations that find personally significant, that they find personally significant. A death can be seen as differently from different perspectives. Some people cry, some people don't cry, some people are too dramatic, some people are hysterical. So different formats of dealing with the same stressful factors. This is just a picture of the different emotional reactions that we can have. Shock, anguish, astonishment, sad, boredom. Boredom is one of the most common emotions you find these days among among children, among teenagers. I am bored. Constantly, I am bored. So emotional reactions can be direct or indirect. Direct can be through your facial expressions. Indirect through your body language. You may not show anything on your face, but your eyes could roll. You could show disinterest. You could be, showing different actions with your hands about what you're feeling. Usually, emotions have a direct impact on your internal organs. So stress over a long period of time can take a toll on your internal organs. Whichever organ is weak, that could be affected. Normal emotions usually is a reaction to a situation, and then it lasts for a day or two, maximum 3 to 4 days, and then you somehow come out of it. But abnormal emotions can last more than 2 weeks, and some people can live with that emotion for years together. That definitely is abnormal. You must have seen people, if you don't like somebody, you avoid that person, you don't talk to that person, and that can go on for years together. That definitely is not okay. Okay, so emotions is essentially an unconscious process. It is spontaneous, and sometimes it can go out of control. Yeah, they are visible directly, and you can see that through your physical expressions. What is the difference between feelings and emotions? Feelings is an intellectual understanding of your emotions. So how well you deal with your emotions is what feelings is. How well you control your emotions. You can burst into tears, or you can convince yourself that this is not the time to burst. Or you can get angry, but you can convince yourself that this is not the time to get angry. Yeah. So we have control over our feelings. Hence, others cannot guess our feelings through the way we act or behave. So the difference is emotions are spontaneous, it is there, but feelings help us to control our emotions. I've just put in these slides for you to understand, because I want you to know that brain records all our traumatic experiences that we've had in the past. Most of them are recorded. Yeah. And the more trauma you have, the more an impact on that. So it takes a toll on the brain structure, and the more negative you have had, negative experiences, one after another, then you could turn out to be a negative person. And trauma in adulthood or childhood is called post-traumatic stress disorder, which could happen out of war situation, out of uncertainty, lacking, losing your jobs, pandemics. All these are traumatic. As I said, emotions can last, the sadness or happiness or enjoyment can last normally for 2 weeks, but if it goes beyond that, then it becomes an abnormal emotion, and it can be of concern. Now, there is a disorder in psychiatric classification called affective disorders, and the main component of that disorder is mood. Sometimes you must have seen people are happy in the morning and then they're sad by evening for no rhyme or reason. Or you could have cyclical emotions. You could be happy for 3 months, and then you could have suddenly go into depression for another 3 months, and then happy for another 3 months. So you could have cycles, or it could be 6 and 6. So it is called an affective disorder or mood disorder or cyclical disorder. So there is a disorder among psychiatric classification called mood disorders. Yeah. I'm going into emotional intelligence. As I said, emotional intelligence is the ability to know your own emotions in comparison to another person's emotions in the given setting. If you're not aware of what another person is feeling, then sorry, you're not emotionally intelligent. If you are only thinking of your own emotions, then you're not emotionally intelligent. You have to be aware of your emotions. You have to be aware of how you're feeling, what you're feeling, how are you reacting in the context of somebody else's emotions and the situation that you're in. So the person who really coined is Peter and John, the term emotional intelligence. And today in most corporate offices, corporate selections, big companies, we look for emotional intelligence in management roles, leadership roles. We know everybody is more or less intelligent who apply for a role, but we want somebody who's emotionally intelligent, who can deal with conflicts, who can deal with decision making, who are not weak in their emotions, who has the ability, intelligence to deal with their own emotions. And now that will vary according to the personality of an individual. That's why I thought I'll connect the two. So you may not be emotionally intelligent if your personality does not go on par with emotional intelligence. If you're a highly anxious person, your emotional intelligence definitely will be low. Yeah? A big part of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Knowing yourself. How many of us know ourselves? How many of us know that I will get angry in a particular situation? How many of us know that I can be patient? You think you're patient, but when a given situation arises, you could react, and you could be doing just the opposite, or you could say the wrong things. So recognizing one's emotions and the effects of that emotion, accurate self-assessment, knowing one's strengths and limits, self-confidence. Now, if you have these two, your self-confidence automatically increases. It is important that you know yourself to show how confident you are. A person who does not know himself could make a fool of himself. He could think he's confident, but he makes a real fool of himself. Yeah. Self-awareness is a major part of emotional intelligence. Self-regulation, control. How much of control do you have over your emotions? How honest and integrity you are, how integral you are. When somebody is not watching, would you do something that is not correct? Taking responsibility for personal performance. If there is a group not doing well, you as a leader or leader of the group would take responsibility for that, or would you pass the buck on to somebody else? Flexibility in handling, how adaptable you are in changing situations. Or would you be rigid in saying, no, I will only do this and I will not go beyond this? How you can think beyond what you're taught, or think beyond what is acceptable, and take the right decision for the benefit of the office you're working for, or for the job that you're doing. For example, our pilots, they are given standard operating procedures. They're not allowed to go beyond those. But in a given situation, if those procedures are not there, they're also told that keeping safety in mind, you can come up with a decision that is taking care of the passengers and safety is involved. Yeah. So taking necessary actions depending on how flexible you are and how innovative you are with coming up with new approaches, new information, new ideas. So emotional intelligence also calls for self-regulation. Handling relationships is another part of emotional intelligence, how well you can be socially competent. I spoke about social intelligence, how socially competent you are to deal with relationships. In an office setting, why do they come through me? Because I evaluate them. I have tests to evaluate and say Don't take this person because he might be a problem. Or select this person, he will be okay. This is to find out how accommodative and how flexible you are in a given situation. Like ours, we in our office, we have people from all parts of the world. How you can adjust in an atmosphere where you have people from UK, US, from the Middle East, from the European countries, how well you adjust with all of them. As I said, the relationship is important. If you don't have empathy, I've got a slide on empathy, so I'll come back to that. If you can't communicate well, and if you cannot accept personality differences or personal differences or cultural differences, then you may not be able to balance the relationship. Empathy is the most important part in emotional intelligence. How empathetic you are towards somebody else. Understanding others. It's just not understanding. It's just not being empathetic. It's what do you do with that? So how do you develop your children, your students, your colleagues? How do you meet customer demands? How do you go beyond the call of your duty? And be politically aware of situations. You know, in corporate offices, we have politics, just like a country has politics. So how well do you play those politics? How well do you manage those politics in an office to get your work done? So empathy is very important. It's more than just being able to recognize the emotional states of others. It also involves your responses to people based on the information that you get. You could feel empathetic towards somebody, but what do you do with that? How do you react? That's important. I spoke about social intelligence. So emotional intelligence is also about social skills. For example, conflict management, communication. You know, I can't stress enough about communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Please talk to your colleagues, to your students, to everybody about what is happening, what is not happening, how can you do this, how can you do that. Parents should communicate with their children. Children should communicate with their parents. Husbands should communicate with their wives. Wives should communicate with their husbands. Otherwise, a lot could go in translation. A lot could be lost in translation. We don't understand why certain person is behaving in a certain way. So communication is very important. Be the change catalyst. Be the person. Be the catalyst that you want to change, and you will be the change catalyst to bring about the changes. I also want to stress on something called learned helplessness, because this is part of forming emotional intelligence and personality. There's a connection between the two. A psychologist and behaviorist called Martin Seligman is the one who coined learned helplessness. What did he do? He took some rats in a cage. The cage had iron bar all over, and they were very happy jumping around. He put in some water and some food, and they were very happy. They drank the water, they ate the food, very happy. Then he introduced slight shock onto the bottom side of the cage. So what did the rats do? They went on to the top, they went on to the topmost portion and side. They quickly came down, took the water, took the food, and went up, and they were happy. Then he introduced shock to the two sides, the bottom and to the side. So they all went on top, but they still came down, quickly drank the water, took the food, and went up and sat. Then he introduced shock onto the top as well. So now the entire cage was filled with shock. The smarter ones quickly eating without drinking water and eventually died. So Seligman, what he's trying to say is that you will reach a stage where you will You will learn to be helpless. When stress comes one after another, you reach a point where you are helpless. It is learned to be helpless, because initially you try to cope with it and then you learn to be helpless. The only way to get out of that is to be optimistic about it. So he is, what he's trying to say is that if you have had abuse, trauma in the past, you can be a little bit on the negative side, and you can become helpless. I'm not going to detail. I'm just showing his picture here, and I want you to read up on him if you can. Viktor Frankl. He is one of those psychologists who came up with a therapy called logotherapy, and he is the one who said, he who has the why to live can break with almost anyhow. He who has a why to live, why do I live, can live with anyhow, if there's a break. He was one of those people who was put into Nazi camps in those days, and he was very much in love with his wife, and he had a mother and a sister, very fond of the sister as well. So he realized, being in the Nazi camp, that true selfishness and true altruism can come out. He saw people killing others in the camp to survive. He also saw people having a small slice of bread being shared because that person also needs to eat. So he realized that it is why of the living. Why am I living? Am I going to be selfish? Am I going to be self-centered? Or should I share my thoughts and feelings and whatever I have with somebody so that the other person can also live? So he came up with this theory that if you really need to live, you can live. Eventually, his wife died in the camp, and then later on, his mom and sister also died in the camp, and he survived. He went out, and of course, he was very, very depressed for some time because he lived for them, and then he realized it is not just family I can live for. I can live for somebody else. I can live for my neighbors. I can live for other people I know. And then he started a clinic, and he started the therapy called logotherapy. It's a very philosophical book, but if you can read his book, it'll be good. So the point to be taken is, it is not selfishness. It is not just your family. You can even live for somebody else if you have the will to live, the why to live. Yeah. So that's the logotherapy I was talking to you about. He said that even in concentration camps, people chose to reach out to others and be compassionate, but people also chose to kill because they were selfish. Now, personality type has a direct influence on emotional intelligence. Yeah. As I said, emotional intelligence is the ability to be self-aware, is the ability to control your emotions, is the ability to reason with your emotions, understand your emotions and others' emotions when we interact with others. It is the ability to express one's emotions, regulate one's emotions, and manage emotions of others. You know, it is so astonishing to see two people arguing. You can easily make out how somebody is trying to take a back seat so that this person who is angry is calming down, whereas the other person who's charged with anger is saying all the wrong things, creating such a rift between two individuals. Personality is a sum total of all of this. Sum total of how well you can manage your emotions, how emotionally intelligent you are, how in general intelligence, your attitudes, your habits. Personality disorders exist. You must have heard of borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, psychopathic personality disorder. Those have definite traits that I'm not going into, but personality, healthy personality in general, can function hand to hand with emotional intelligence. So when you're emotionally intelligent, you have a good personality. If you have a good personality, you're emotionally intelligent. Corporate companies look for employees with high EI, emotional intelligence. High EI people will adapt with differences and deal with conflicts amicably. Individuals with a dark shade to their personality definitely will have a low EI, and they are more often emotionally unstable. And in airline industry, since we are so safety conscious, we look for emotional stability. We want our safety related positions to be filled by emotionally stable people. So emotions play a role in how we think and behave. You can learn to control your emotions, and you can identify, if you're emotionally intelligent, you can identify when something needs to change. So we may need to change the way we think, our attitude, and the way we behave. Examples of being emotionally intelligent are develop good listening skills, being able to accept criticism and responsibility, being able to move on after making a mistake, being able to say no when you need to, being able to share your feelings with others, being able to solve problems in the ways that work for everyone, having empathy for other people. These are the signs of being emotionally intelligent. How will you increase your emotional intelligence? Utilize an assertive in a nice way and be firm about it, be consistent about it. Aggressiveness is low EI, low emotional intelligence, where you yell, scream, and say all the wrong things. Respond instead of reacting to a conflict. Don't react. Be proactive. Respond. Actively listening. You should develop active listening skills. Be motivated. Practice ways to maintain a positive attitude. I'm not just saying out of the book. All these I practice, and I practice with my patients and my employees. Positive attitude. I mean, it's easy for me to sit on this chair and say, oh, be positive when you're going through something bad. But even when you're going through something bad, you still can be positive. Self-awareness. Take criticism well. Always remember, criticism is a step towards improving yourself. It's a step towards development, self-development. If you get defensive about the criticism, then you're never going to learn and never going to improve. And these are for my lovely children who are listening to me. If your teachers criticize you, always see the reason behind the criticism and develop on that. Empathize with others. Always empathize with your friends. You know, always remember they must be going through something to have reacted in such a way, and be there for them. Finally, this is my last slide. If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how high a position you are, you're not going to get very far, because you need to be emotionally intelligent to reach a good position. Thank you very much. I hope I was not too complicating, and I hope I was able to express my thoughts clearly. I'm open for discussion. I'm open for questions. I enjoy talking to little kids and teenagers, and I enjoyed very much. Thank you for inviting me, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.